All right, back for part two of really the first day's assignment. So this is not for Tuesday, this is still Monday's assignment. So the question now is, what is a proportion? All those letters were kind of crammed together there to make it fit in. Well, obviously ratios would be pretty stupid if we couldn't do anything with it. So here's what we do with ratios. A proportion is an equation that states two ratios are equal. An equation that states two ratios are equal. So a proportion can be written like this. So A to B is equal to C to D, or A over B equals C over D. And then a very, very, very important property is this cross product property. For any proportion, guys, the cross products are always equal. So what we're saying right here is the way I would, or the property states that the products of and let's try that again. The cross products, not A times B, A times D, so if I multiply diagonally, that product will equal the other diagonal product, which is B times C. So you say, what good is that? Well, let's say, and how is that even true? Let's take 1/2. We know that 1/2 is equal to like 3/6. All right, so if I were to cross multiply, I should get the same answer, don't I? I do, right? 1 times 6 is equal to 2 times 3. 6 equals 6. So you see that cross products are equal. Well, where that would come in handy is, let's suppose I had something like 1/2 equals x over 17. Okay. Well, I could solve for x and find out the solution to that equation by just simply cross multiplying and setting the two cross products equal. So this is very, very, very easy to do. You see this with a couple of these examples, and they get progressively harder, so don't leave me too soon here. All right, let's cross multiply and we'll solve for x. It doesn't matter which one you cross multiply first. I like for my x to be on the left side, so I'm going to say 2 times x is 2x, and 4 times 7 is 28. So dividing by 2, I get 14. So basically what we're saying is that 4/14 is going to reduce to 2/7. 4/14 is equal to 2/7. Cross multiply here, you're going to have 10x equals 19 times 12 is 228. And then we're going to divide, and that's going to be 22.8. So you are going to get some decimal answers in this section, so don't freak out about it. These are not angles or anything, so it shouldn't make too big of a deal. In 13, we're going to cross multiply, but immediately you see we have something different here. We have a binomial. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply 19 times both of those. So I'm going to write it like this first, all right? And that equals 6 times 13. So notice that cross multiplying gets rid of the fractions. That's the cool thing about cross multiplying. Now I'm going to distribute. Okay, I'm going to distribute 19 into both of these. So that's going to be 19x minus 19. And then 6 times 13 is 78. Now just solve this like a normal equation. Let's add 19 to both sides. So adding 19 over here, that would be 97. And then dividing by 19, that is 5.1. So these are not designed to come out to be whole number answers, so don't expect them to. All right. I got a similar problem here, except this time the binomial is in the denominator of my second fraction. So it doesn't change anything. I'm going to say 5 times both of those. So if you want to avoid that first, you do not. If you already know what's going to happen with distributing, you can kind of avoid writing that first step out and just go ahead and go straight to this one. 5x plus 20. The biggest mistake people make with distributive property is they know to multiply 5 times x, but they forget to multiply 5 times 4. 17 times 19, 323. Okay? Subtract 20 from both sides. 5x is 303. And obviously 5 is not going to go into that an even number of times. So with these decimal values, you may have to round sometimes. Let's round everything to the nearest tenth. Okay? Round to the nearest tenth. All right, 15 and 16 just give us a little bit more complicated binomial. This has got a number in front of x. Nothing else is going to change. So let's multiply by 20. That's going to be 40x minus 180 equals 90. So 40x is equal to 270. And then I'm going to divide by 40x is going to be 6.75. So notice on that one, I am not going to round that to 6.8 because that's the exact answer. All right. These others, 5.1, 60.6, those were like lengthy decimal numbers. So we just shortened it. But if you have an answer that comes out to 2 decimal places, just go ahead and leave it. 16, cross multiply here. All right. So I'm going to say 18 times 3x. So 18 times 3 is 54x. Plus, and then 18 times 4 is 72. And then 12 times 15 is going to be 180. So definitely calculators are helpful right here. So that's 54x is equal to 108. And this one does come out to be a whole number. X is equal to 2. All right, so then we get down to these types. 17 and 18 have binomials on both sides. 19 and 20 are going to even be slightly different from those. So let's take a look at these two. All right, so we're going to cross multiply both directions. So that means we've got to distribute 3 into the binomial on the right, and we've got to distribute 18 into this binomial on the left. So let's do that one first. 18 times x is 18x. 18 times 2 is 36, so 18 times 20 is going to be 360. All right, and 3 times x is 3x, and then 3 times negative 11 is negative 33. All right, so there we go. We're going to subtract 3x from both sides. That's going to give me a 15x. We're going to add 360 over here to this side, but we still have to subtract 33. That's going to be 327. And then divide by 15, and that is 21.8. All right? Shouldn't be too difficult for you to handle this. All right, here we go. 7x plus 112 equals 18x plus 18. So this time I'm going to subtract 7x from both sides. That's going to give me an 11x right there. I'm going to subtract 18 from this 112, and that's going to give me 94. And then divide 94 by 11, that's going to be 8.5. All right, just some basic algebra that you have done before, but you just need to be reminded because this is a big part of this lesson. Now, here's the difference between 19 and, or the difference that 19 and 20 have from the ones right before it. Here, notice what's going to happen. You're going to have to multiply, cross multiply, and those are 2 binomials that are multiplying. So these are going to result, these type will be quadratics. Whoa, quadratics. Thought you left those behind in Algebra 1, didn't you? These are going to be quadratic equations. So I want you can either solve by factoring. Okay, you can solve by factoring, or you can use the quadratic formula. QF, the quadratic formula. I am not going to solve these by the quadratic formula, so you can actually go to YouTube if you want to see a quadratic formula type problem. All right, so let's see what this is going to do. And I am going to write this one out. This is going to be x minus 1 times x plus 5 equals 5 times 27. All right, so remember, when you are multiplying binomials together, you have to multiply x times both of these. You're really distributing both of these terms in the first parentheses into these over here. Sometimes people call it the FOIL method. You may have heard that before. But here's what we're going to get. We're going to say x times x, okay? So I'm going to distribute x into the first term there, x. then I'm going to multiply x times 5. So x times x is x squared. X times 5 is 5x. Okay, that shouldn't be too big of a strain on anybody. Then I'm going to say negative 1 times x, that's negative 1x, and negative 1 times 5, and that is going to be negative 5. Over here, I have 5 times 27, that's going to be 135. All right, so here's the thing. How the heck do I solve this thing for x? Well, we have two techniques we can do, either factoring or quadratic formula. But in order to factor, this number over here has to be 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine these like terms in the middle. That's going to be 4x. And then I'm going to subtract 135 from both sides. That's going to make me have negative 5 minus 135 is negative 140. All right, again, if I'm just like going way too fast for you, go back, look at a YouTube video on solving quadratic equations by factoring. So I got to type in. Okay, so when I solve by factoring, basically what I'm doing is I'm taking this sum of terms and I'm figuring out what numbers go into, what numbers multiply together to give me 140, but could add up to 4, all right? Well, 140 is a pretty big number and has lots of factors, all right? So, back in Algebra 1, you probably had really, really simple, small numbers that made it easy. But if you think about this, 14 and 10 will work, okay? Now, there's a pattern to this. If the last term is negative, that tells you that your signs in the two factors are going to be, one's going to be plus and one's going to be minus, because that's the only way to get a negative 140. So the two numbers that go in these two blank spaces that I have right here, they multiply to give me negative 140, and at the same time, they add up to 4. So if I let 14 be positive and let 10 be negative, okay, we'll look at it. 14 times negative 10 is negative 140, and 14 plus negative 10 is going to be positive 4. So these are my two factors right here. Now, I'm still needing to solve and find out what x is. So at this point, what I'm going to do is use a property called the zero product property. The zero product property says if a times b is equal to 0, then either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. Think about that. That makes sense. If you're multiplying two numbers together and you get 0 as a result, one of those numbers has to be 0. All right, so here's what we have. We have two things multiplied together. They're not numbers, they're binomials, but we can treat them like numbers. Those two multiplied together equal 0. So that means either x plus 14 should equal 0 or x minus 10 should equal 0. In this case, x is equal to negative 14, and over here, x is equal to positive 10. Well, guess what? Either of those two numbers will work in the original equation if you were to plug them in, okay? Think about it, negative 14, this would be 5 over negative 15, which is negative 1/3. And over here, you'd have negative 14 plus 5, which is negative 9. And negative 9 over 27 is also negative 1/3. Plug in 10. 5 over 9 equals 15 over 27. Guess what 15 over 27 would reduce to? 5 over 9. 5 over 9. So those are my two answers right there. All right, last one, number 20. We're going to cross multiply again, okay? So I'm going to have 2x plus 5 times x minus 6 is equal to 6 times 7, 42, okay? So we're going to multiply this out, okay? So remember, all we're doing is distributing 2x into both of these. So I'm drawing the arrows right here, 2x times x and 2x times negative 6. And then 5 times x and 5 times negative 6. You can write them in any order you want to. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 6 is negative 12x. 5 times x is 5x. And 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. All right, and that equals 42. All right, so again, we've got two like terms here in the middle. We can combine those. That's going to be 2x squared minus 7x. We're going to have to get this to be equal to 0 so we can solve it. So subtract 42, negative 30 and negative 42 make negative 72, okay? So there's my trinomial. So here's the deal. When you have x squared out in front, like we did on number 19, we just have a 1 in front of that x squared as the coefficient. That's what we call easy factoring. That pattern, does not exist now where the two numbers that we got, 14 and negative 10, that they multiply to give you the last number, that one doesn't exactly work anymore. So you have to play around with this one a little bit more to figure out what the factors are. So you might want to just simply use the quadratic formula, okay? So let me show you the quadratic formula real quick, okay? And you may remember how to do quadratic formula. If so, that's great. It's not nearly as difficult as it looks. Here's what the quadratic formula is. It's x equals minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that's all over 2a. And you go, what the heck is that? Well, that quadratic formula comes from a technique that we call completing the square on a basic trinomial. So let me switch colors right here for a second, all right? So when we say, what is this a, b, and c stuff over here? Well, when a quadratic's set equal to 0 and written in descending order, the first coefficient is a, the second number is b, the last number is c, all right? So those are your a, b, and c values. So those values go down here in this formula. So you don't even have any x's at all right? It's just using the quadratic formula. So here we go. The first thing we want is the opposite of b. Well, if b is already a negative 7, the opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. And then I have plus or minus negative 7 squared. So negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49. Guys, that number will always be a positive number. B squared will always be a positive. Now, minus 4 times A is 2, all right, and C is negative 72. And guys, that is all over 2 times A, which is 2 times 2 or 4, all right? Now, well, let's bring a calculator in. Let me bring my calculator in. It'll take just a second for it to load. And I'll show you how you can do this. And I know you don't have calculators with you at home, but if you go to your app store, you can get a free TI-30 calculator. I think if you have a Droid, your TI-30 looks exactly like the TI-30 that we use in class. If you've got an iPhone, which probably most of you do, it won't look exactly like this, but the calculator if you go to your app store, it will work in a very, very similar way, okay? So you want a scientific calculator. All right, so let me move it over here so we can see what's going on. So I want to plug in that quadratic equation into this calculator over here, all right? So first thing I want a fraction. So I'm going to have to hit n over d, all right? That's going to produce a fraction, all right? And so in my numerator, I want 7. All right, now here's the only thing you can't do in the calculator. You can't put a plus or minus sign. So you have to do those two separately. So we're gonna do 7 plus, but I'm gonna show you a nice little shortcut at the end, which will allow you to go back and just make that one change. So 7 plus second square root, all right? 7 plus the square root of 49 minus 4 times 2 times negative 72. All right, and notice when I put that in my calculator, I put it in exactly like it looks on your screen, okay? And then down arrow, and that's going to be 2 times 2. If you want to, you just go ahead and say that's going to be 4, all right? Hit enter, and bingo, check it out. There's one of your answers right there. X is equal to 8, okay? X is equal to 8. But what about the other one? What about 7 minus all that square root mess, okay? Well, here's what I can do. If I just up arrow and highlight the original problem, I can hit second and enter, okay? Do I want to do that? No, I highlighted it. So all I have to do is hit enter and it'll bring that back up again. Okay. Now, if I see, there's my original answer, that 8 right there. If I back arrow, I can get all the way over there to that plus sign. Okay. Right there. Okay. See how the plus sign is flashing? I just want to change that to a minus sign. And that way I don't have to type in the entire thing. Now, if you're doing that on a phone, on a calculator app, I doubt you'll be able to do that. But when you guys get back to class in a couple of weeks, we will be able to do that. Okay? So I'm going to hit enter, and that answer is going to be the other answer. X is equal to -9/2. Okay? So there are my two answers using the quadratic formula. Okay? That one's a little bit tougher to factor, so I want to show you that technique right there, quadratic formula, because some of you may just decide you want to do quadratic formula all the time. Okay, so this is the end of the first video. Here's your first homework assignment. Okay, now guys, this is due on Tuesday. Okay, you might go, when on Tuesday? On Tuesday. Okay, don't wait till midnight to turn it in. But if I do not hear from each one of you, if I don't see this as an email in my account, which is a picture of your homework assignment, notice this is a 2-page document, so show me both pages, then I will count that as a 0 in the grade book. So make sure that you are sending me your homework daily, okay? It's both of these 2 pages, this page and the next page. And they're just giving you plenty of room. It's not really that many problems, 22 problems. The last 2 are going to be the most difficult ones, okay, 21, 22. So first page probably take you about 5 minutes to do, maybe 10, okay? Easy stuff. Go back and look at your examples. Don't just look at these like cold turkey. Watch the video. If you don't understand, go back and rewatch the video, okay, or videos in this case. All right, I hope you guys are doing well, not coughing and sneezing because you got the coronavirus, because if you got it, I probably got it, and we'll all be infected, right? But I will be back next time.